Welcome in, everyone, back to the third episode in a row of Tuck Talks with Terry. I'm Doug, or Tacadian. Over to my right is Terry, my designated young person and tech guy. Just the one who keeps me on track for the most part. And down
The one who
below,
tells you how to turn it off and turn it on again to get your stuff to work.
and down below we've got our guest for tonight, old school friend of mine and owner of Kakuteru Lounge, which is where he's currently filming from. The illustrious Eric Scouten. So, Eric, number
Kakuteru.
that was going to be my number one question. How exactly do you pronounce it properly? Because I'm sure I butchered it.
And it's kind of a long-winded answer. Of the name is to kind of make reference to the fact that I'm pretty heavily like Japanese influenced in my style of service, and also just in my kind of pursuit of understanding my ingredients and flavor profiling, and so why it is the way it is, kind of in essence, it's cocktail phonetically in Japanese. So the actual word is not something that I would ever expect a random North American English-speaking person to just like say. So however you end up saying it is fine. So kakuteru, like I don't really care. The actual word is kokuteru, which again, not expecting anybody to come in and say it. It means cocktail, and I don't even use the name. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a name. I just call this the Cocktail Lounge.
Nice. No. Sorry, thirsty as fuck this morning. I don't know. Something about talking to a bartender just makes you thirsty.
This morning, says it. What? It's almost 7 o'clock your time.
Look, I woke up at 1 o'clock. Okay, it's been a long couple of days. But yeah. So we were talking just before we went on about your walk across New Brunswick there a couple of years back. But how far was it again? You said that you did it was 484.
484, yeah.
Yeah.
So, basically 300 miles in 8 days.
Yeah, just insane. And that was for Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Wish, yeah. So we raised just under $40,000 that year for Make-A-Wish, myself and a guy named Adam Chamberlain. And it was fun project. I don't know if we're necessarily ever going to do it again. Like, we did 2 years of it and kind of built on it the second year, and then I ended up opening, this lounge, and luxury of week on, week off when I was training for those 2 years. So week on working, I was on Grand Manan.
Mm-hmm.
In the evenings, there's nothing to do. So I would work, 12 to 16 hours depending on the shift. And then I would walk/jog for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. I'd go sleep for anywhere from 4 to 6.5, 7 hours, and then I'd get up and go back to work. And I'd do that 7 days at a time, and then be with my family when I was home. And it was that mind-numbing schedule, but that's what allowed me to be able to do it. Whereas now that my life is so consumed.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah. And speaking of the family, you're getting married here soon, coming up, aren't you?
I mean, I tell people all the time that I am married. Like, when I'm referring to Kristen, I just call her my wife because it's easier than explaining that I'm getting married to a woman I house with, have 2 children with, have been together for 8 years. Just say that we're already married, but yeah, we're getting married in September at a friend's place. Actually, the photo that you said you used for the loading screen there, that was in the same place that we're going to be getting married.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. No, no. Funnily enough, so we were our guest yesterday that we had on, Ben Brainerd, stand-up comedian, and been a long time fan of stand-up comedy, but Terry, this is the guy who introduced me to stand-up comedy in the first place. Really, funnily enough, Ben mentioned that Mitch Hedberg was one of his major inspirations, and you're the one who introduced me to Mitch Hedberg back in the day.
So you're the person who made Doug funny.
Funny. He's way funnier than I am. And I think that's why I like stand up so much, is because like I am super. I'm in Big Bang Theory. Like I literally don't have a sensor for sarcasm, unless you're being really obvious and you're like, well. I'm probably not going to get it until I see the look on your face as a response to like my matter-of-fact answer. So yeah, I would argue that the Doug's definitely the funny one out of the two of us.
But yeah, no, I found that funny when I was thinking about it last night. It's like, oh yeah, shit, Eric's the one who is the one who taught me about or showed me Mitch Hedberg, and we used to watch. We used to watch a lot of them together back when CBC had Just for Laughs on all the time.
And Comedy Now and a few others. We were pretty lucky as far as like stand up went for here, in my opinion, anyway, because we also had like the Hubcap Comedy Festival, which was based out of Moncton, I believe, and so we like the Maritimes has a really good stand up scene. And there's a lot of little recordings that made its way onto the limited amount of channels that we actually had. So yeah, we were lucky to be able to see it. I mean, first Nikki Payne, I think I would have been like 12 or something like that, and she didn't like get onto the CBC for anything like active until years and years later. We were pretty fortunate. Lots of good comedians from this region.
Yeah, 100%. But which I found also kind of weird that we don't really have a. That being said, we don't really have a comedy club around. I'm aware of.
So the space that I'm in right now, there used to be a comedy club right beside it, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, why it didn't work. That space isn't like the best space in my opinion, so that could have been part to do with it. But there is a comedy club here in St. John. It's directly beside the strip club of all places. I think it's the same owners, and if I'm not, is still one on the east side, just like a small one. Anyway, to have a couple of others, but yeah, and I don't know if there's any in Fredericton or Moncton, but there's a lot of stand-up shows. So I've got a few friends here in St. John that are stand-up comedians or amateur stand-up comedians, and they put on their own shows. They book places out and they have people in, and it seems to be fairly popular. Like they have a good following. Every time I see them posting about their shows, there's a good group of people there.
That's awesome. I must just not be getting the same news. That's when my Google Foos failing me.
That's fair. I mean, we rely too much on social media sometimes and miss out on the things that are directly beside us. I get comments like that here at the lounge, like quite a bit. People not knowing that a thing went on, and I mean, mostly my fault for not really going out of my way to advertise things. But the most I do is give a couple of posts on like a story there until I book it out, and then once full, I don't bother like telling anybody else about it because I'm full. So
yeah, and like that's a big thing that I've come to find with like wrestling is sometimes we'll do double shows and we'll go into the first show of the day knowing the second show is booked, and we'll still mention that there's a show at night. It's like, maybe we shouldn't do that because we're giving all these people false hope that they're going to get a ticket to something they can't get a ticket to. It's like, once we're full, we should probably just stop.
although in that case, you might have an advantage in creating that like.
Well,
it's like
especially this one specific example, we were doing like carryover stories from one show to the next. Like specifically, the first show had tournament matches that were going to be paid off in the second show. So it was worth mentioning for that factor. It's just one of those things where it's like we've now told all these people who may not have known about the second show that there's going to be a second show they now cannot go to.
Yeah. Yeah. continued next week in Too Bad. If you don't know, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, it's like next time on Dragon Ball Z, tune in 6 weeks because we got to edit the episode and everything. Like, these things take time, people. We're sorry, but you get it. You get it.
Oh, man. Now, Dragon Ball Z was one of the ones that I never really got into as a kid.
I was so hooked.
I know. You and my brother were super into it.
And like we so back in the day, like because you're younger than us, so like it wasn't common to have computers in your home for most people. Like I was lucky we had one, but Dad took care of the access center in the Gagetown Elementary School, and so this is like a room full of computers that people could come and use, just a computer lab, right? And every Wednesday go down and have game night, and we would play. And of the week it was. That was the night of the week where like I was pumped to go and play video games with my friends. We're like linking computers together and playing like Bolo and stuff like that, like having a great time. So I was more excited to leave either. So I get like really impatient if like people were sticking around too long because I'm waiting for my dad to get the fuck out of there because Dragon Ball Z starts at 9:30 and I am not missing that shit. Like, let's fucking go. Like, yeah.
So I don't want to out our guest, but I have fun doing it to Doug. Doug, the young person moment. What's Bolo?
Bolo was. I don't know if anyone else outside of Gagetown even played this game. That's the funniest thing. It was such a niche game that we used to play it on the Access Center. They had Macs first of all. They weren't PCs. They had one PC. Everything else was playing on Macs, but it was the first game that we'd ever played networked, and it was like it blew our fucking minds. But you played.
And then you could maps and bases, and it's like a top-down view, like a bird's eye view. And so you're creating your own bases and attacking each other, and it's just it was a blast.
So it's like an RTS game, like essentially, or I guess probably more turn-based at the time that it would have come out.
No, it was real time. You played
Was
as
it real time?
you
Damn.
played as a single tank, and you would go around and hunt other tanks, but you could hide in like trees and like lay mines and shit. It was surprisingly ahead of its time.
Damn.
But yeah, I don't know if
Huh.
I don't know if anybody else in the world fucking has ever played it. Or if that was
Okay.
Somebody must have. It couldn't have just been us, man. We came
I
from
don't
a
feel
town of
I don't feel
700
so
people.
bad now. I also don't get the same level of satisfaction out of it that I normally do, but I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah. No, we
We were really lucky. Like we grew up in a town of 700 people, and 780 I think is what it was, so just shy of 800. Big difference. We had a lot of resources though, considering the size of the community, and really aided in us having like a pretty awesome childhood, quite frankly. So
I was gonna say I was quite fortunate. My grandfather was military, so like my mom comes from military background. He worked as a commissionaire and and as a what's the word I want? MP. He was an MP. Everyone's love to hate.
told me
But he
that.
became a commissioner. So I was really fortunate that he knew the benefit of technology, like having been in the military and having to have to work with technology during the whole transition. So he was adamant that for my sake, growing up, there was a computer in my home. He went out and bought my mom and I a computer and all that, and made sure to like play games with me and teach me how to use it and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate in that regard as well. I grew up with a computer in my home, and I was born in 95. So like even like I had a computer as early as I can remember, like 98, 99.
Mm-hmm.
So like even at the point where I was using a computer, it was not super common to have one in every home. And I realized how lucky I was in that.
No, we were in a really weird point in time in a really weird geography. Like to the point that we're like, yeah, let's all go down to the community access center and play a networked fucking video game and then go back and watch Dragon Ball Z. But like the people we go to school with are farm boys. who are like, what's a computron? And this is at the same time that like CDs are just coming out and like the internet's a thing, but most of the movies in my house are like copied from Blockbuster VHSs.
So what you're saying is you would like your rights and residuals from Stranger Things now.
It was a weird time to be alive. Really was.
It was such a a massive like transition of technology. We saw things become like ultra relevant and disappear the course of a couple of years, and like
Oh yeah.
even a full decade, and it just
So
like
I've got the perfect
Yep.
analogy for this, even in my timeline, to like in my time frame too. When I was in college, my first year, I went to school for TV and or for broadcast television. It's a 2-year program at Fanshawe. I was friends with people in my second year, in the second year of the program. When I was in my first year, the second years did a project on vines because vines were insanely popular. They had just taken off. They were huge. And when you really stop to think about that and break it down, coming up with a whole tangible narrative that is told in 7 seconds, 3 shots, is actually a very hard thing to do. It takes a lot of creativity. So, second years were tasked with just making a vine because it's that hard. But like in a reference to that, things came and went so quickly. By the time I got second year, that wasn't a project anymore.
Yeah.
That's how fast Vine disappeared.
Yeah. See, for us, it was like, yeah, just the amount of like the weird short blip in time that it went from listening to a song on the radio to recording cassettes to making a mix CD to I have an iPhone now is just ridiculous.
I went to school with a Walkman. Like I remember first grade I had a Walkman.
Yep.
By fifth grade I had a Discman, and then come seventh or eighth grade I had an MP3 player.
Yeah.
So like I get that. That was part of that whole transition.
Yeah, just super bizarre. But then, and where we're out at, like, you remember when the 64 came out?
Ding.
There was like two people in fucking Gagetown that had a 64, so we could play GoldenEye, and that was it.
exactly.
GoldenEye, because of that, like GoldenEye was one of the big draws for us that we'd bring the 64 out to our friend's place or like go over to Anthony's or whatever and beat the shit out of each other while playing it.
I
When
so
we did
badly want to troll Doug and do the iconic like, hey, what's that? But like, goddamn, if the game isn't so popular, like I played GoldenEye on N64 as a kid.
Yeah.
like we would have events and stuff like that through the different like social groups that had been created by members of this little community, right? And it would lead us to spending the night overnight at school fairly often, whether it be like cadets or some other thing that was happening in the town. And inevitably, the 64 was always brought. A TV was brought out from the AV club, the AV storage closet, and we'd be playing GoldenEye, and it was such a good bonding point for us too, because I think we all kind of had like very different upbringing. The group of friends that we had, like Doug said, you got like farmers, you got military brats, you had like literally like such a mix of personalities, and it gave us this like common point to kind of rally around, and often became fairly violent, but you know
Yeah.
It's centered around a James Bond game. If it didn't become violent, are you even playing the game right?
Well, one of our friends, Anthony, was notoriously just
yeah.
great at the game. Just great at the game. Like we'd play a game and everyone would be like, it would be like 12 to 11 to fucking 7 to minus 14. And Anthony's the minus 14. But but yeah, he and every time he got killed, he would take it quite personally. So,
I I I
you're
get it.
you were fighting him
I get
on
it.
screen just about as much as you were fighting him off screen.
Hey, I get it. You know what? If you're gonna pick on me in the game, I'm gonna pick on you out of the game.
If you can't beat him, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't have been
If
so
you
bad
can't beat him,
if
kick his ass.
it wouldn't have been so bad if Anthony wasn't fucking like 6.5 feet tall and could reach you from across the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, didn't they ever tell you to pick on someone your own size, Doug?
Yeah. No, you always punch up.
He was so lanky.
Oh my god. Yeah. Just a fucking beast. But so circling back to your lounge, what I know, but for the purpose of the interview, what inspired you to start the lounge in St. John, or like to open it up?
I have the skill set. I really could have gone anywhere in the world and done what I'm doing. Coming to New Brunswick from Central America in 2013. Dad had like a bout with some kind of cancer. Time that it had been like kind of unexpectedly sprung on me that he had cancer, and wasn't the last time either. And this guy's just literally walking, like a health disaster most of the time, and yet somehow he's 82 this December. So you just kind of get used to it after a while. But I wanted to stay kind of close because I didn't really know what was going on, and I hadn't quite gotten used to the like ups and downs of like having a parent with health just constantly up and down. So and was like the only place that had a beer bar at the time that I really respected. Was the Garrison District Ale House. I had recently been certified as an international beer judge, and I wanted to keep kind of developing my skills in the beer world and kind of developing a name for myself. And but it had burnt down that winter that I came back, so that wasn't an option. And the next closest thing was the St. John Ale House. The beer program at the time wasn't anything to really brag about, but I went and applied for a job there because it was close enough that I could get home to Gagetown and like help if I really needed to, but far enough away that I wasn't being asked to go and help every day. So I could still have a life, you know what I mean? Parents have a small hobby farm, and there's always work to do, right? So, I ended up in St. John because of that, and I realized really quickly that an interesting energy in St. John. There's a really cool mix between like the blue collar workers and the like newer, fresher blood in the city, people who have moved here from away that are just really optimistic about the potential of the city. St. John was plagued by basically recession slash decrease in population from the early 80s until basically the early 2010s. So you can't really blame the people that were living here for being a bit pessimistic. And I think that that's kind of what the rest of New Brunswick knows St. John for, as being, a dark, a dirty, a smelly place, prostitution, childhood poverty, pregnancy, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's
I was
looked
just
at.
saying, any of my childhood visits to New Brunswick, we did not spend a whole lot of time in St. John.
I think that that's really like how I was still looking at St. John before moving here, and realized really quickly that that's just like not what St. John is. And it might have been at one time, but it's grown way past its reputation with the rest of the province. So I just felt like there was a really good energy here. I managed to kind of help rewrite the beer program at the St. John Ale House. Not too long after that, I took a job with Port City Royal, which is a restaurant. It's a contemporary restaurant, and we were able to do some really cool things. We were named second best new restaurant in Canada by En Route magazine that year. I was lucky enough to be featured in like an online publication of GQ magazine for the UK. I got into Wine Advocate magazine. A lot of like accolades and commendations from many different, and so it allowed me to kind of build a name for myself in the cocktail world here in New Brunswick, because we don't have a whole lot of cocktail culture. So it really kind of established me as an authority, because I was kind of the only one that was really diving into it at the time. And I inherently just really enjoyed St. John's. So once I met Kristen and we, became a couple, and it just seemed like an easy choice to kind of set up shop here. She's originally from Hampton, so her family's pretty close. Mm-hmm. And for working for people for so long, and I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. Bar world, I love food and beverage. I love hospitality, and for basically 15 years had given my passion to somebody else, and given it to their business, and nobody's ever going to pay you for their passion, or for your passion, right? So like if you want to somebody, you're well within your rights to do that, but you need to understand that you're doing it for free. And as much as I kept telling myself that, it's still really hard to do, and you become very emotionally connected to the things that you're doing. So after doing that several times, I decided that I wasn't willing to work for anybody else in this industry anymore, but I really wanted to be in this industry. And so we took the steps to open a little cocktail bar. It's not particularly functional as a business model. If I'm not here busting my ass off, we don't go nowhere. It's got 12 seats. I only take 12 people at a time. It's very personal, very intimate.
But that again speaks to the Japanese influence. Like you hear about a lot of very prominent sushi bars in Japan, they only seat up to around 20, 24 people at it, and that's a very large bar.
I mean, even the way that my service station, like my work area behind the bar, is set up is actually heavily influenced by like a Japanese sushi bar, so that people can see what I'm doing and be part of the experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In here right now. I've been closed for the last couple of days, and so I've been in here doing prep and stuff. But like, we took an old organ and transformed it back bar, and then literally it's just bar seats. Everything's pulled back right now, so I can sweep in a tiny little lounge area, and then I'm up on a little balcony right now that seats 3 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a small little intimate space, but honestly it looks very cozy, very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's always been the kind of type of place that I've been more attracted to as well. I grew out of going to bars pretty early in my drinking time, but going to pubs and like smaller, more intimate, like can I go have a beer or cocktail or something with my friends, that very much more what I gravitate towards.
I mean, I worked in nightclubs. I had a blast. But now, this is the style of service that I want. It's allowing me to operate at a level of like service and hospitality that's not functional in other establishments. I'm really taken with the Japanese concept called omotenashi. It's long-winded, but the way it's been explained to me, what I understand of it is that it's another person purely for the joy of providing for another person, and there's a specific way to do that. You calculate all of their needs, wants, and desires ahead of so that they never go with a need, want, or desire unfilled while in your presence. So they never realized that they needed or wanted anything while they were around you. That never occurred to them that there was something missing, something that they wanted, craved. Everything was already there in front of them, and it's a difficult thing to achieve. I think even in Japan, where culturally it's something that's the symbiotic relationship between the establishment and the patron, something that can't really exist in North American culture, unfortunately, because the consumer has destroyed hospitality.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that is the case. But this is like my attempt at like holding on to a level of like hospitality. Like, we're known as being hospitable, right? And hospitality, like literally it's a thing, right? And the bigger we get and the more people we have, the less likely any community is to remain personal and tactile with each other. And we mentioned I'm not super techie earlier on when we were chatting before the live feed started, and so to me this is a way of maintaining an analog connection with people and with hospitality. So
Oh, that's awesome. I know. So two things about the wife. First of all, said just mentioned in the chat how much she loves St. John. I have grown. I used to be St. John's biggest shit talker, but I've grown to like it. I dislike driving in it for the sheer fact that if you're on Main or what's the other road, you're on Main or the other one. Either way, you're fine. If you have to go anywhere outside of that, you're fucked. Just fucked.
weird because it's more like 4 separate little communities that are joined together. And so like east side, west side, north and south, right? And it's a pain in the ass to move from one area to the other.
Oh my god.
Everybody likes their side and everybody likes to shit on the like St. Johners are really competitive with each other, which is kind of funny. I live uptown. My business is uptown, so in the South End. I enjoy the South End. There's lots of pros and cons. No place you live is going to be without some cons, right?
Yeah. No,
but
if you're driving in St. John, it's like going through a bigger city in an MMO where like the gates are like loading screens. That's basically how it feels. Like you're just like constantly going from stoplight loading screen to stoplight loading screen. And then you'll like go over a hill and you're like, I'm supposed to go left somewhere. And they're like, back there. You fucked up. You're like, well, how do I get there now? You're like, in 15 minutes, you might turn around and find it again.
Because of like roadway infrastructure here too. Like Sims Corner is a fucking gong show.
Yeah.
There's a few people think are yields, but they're actually like your own lane coming into like an ongoing like drive kind of thing. So you're coming in on your own lane beside 2 other lanes, making a 6 lane, and you want to see people just like panic.
You see, I'm used to like Toronto, like seeing Toronto driving, where it's a bunch of one-way streets and a bunch of like you can't turn left here, and all you need to do is fucking go left, and for the next like 8 blocks, you just can't.
I've
like
driven through Toronto.
Like that.
Yeah, I've driven through Toronto and Montreal plenty, and generally fine with it. St. John, like every time I stop, I'm like, I'm alive. I survived. Excellent.
I'm alive.
I feel like we just have a lot of bad drivers too. Like
London
as bad
very
as
bad for that.
Fredericton has worse drivers than St. John. I'll give it that. And they have no excuse for it because Fredericton's super easy to navigate. They're just terrible. Terrible people in Fredericton.
Just take them turn signals right off the back of the car.
Yeah. Who
They're
needs
a
lights
suggestion.
or asphalt?
They're just a suggestion.
Yeah. I once saw a guy in a truck drive over 4 different parking lots, and they had like grass dividers between each parking lot. Drove straight through 4 parking lots just so he didn't have to go through a red light, and then just yep.
That sounds pretty fucking New Brunswick. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah.
You're so rural. I think people like seriously
like that sounds so rural that could have been Newfie and no one would have questioned it.
I've had this conversation with many people in the last little bit, but like, and I'm sure the internet, anybody watching will correct me because my stats aren't going to be perfect, but it's something like 52% of the population of Prince Edward Island lives in Charlottetown. Okay.
Yeah.
Something like 50, I think at last I saw it was like 54, maybe 56% of the entire population of Nova Scotia lives in the HRM, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe that.
40% Brunswickers are split between St. John, Fredericton, and Moncton, and the rest are scattered around the rest of the province. Like, we're rural as fuck. Like,
yeah, well, that's like, I wasn't kidding. I was like, my grandparents were from Centerville, and I was like, that is the middle of butt fuck nowhere. Like Like my dad every summer was like, "You ready to go to New Brunswick?" And I was like, "No, because there is nothing to do but go stand out in the fucking cornfield. You want to go fishing? Dad, I'm from a city of 300,000 people. If I wanted to go fishing, we could go to the fucking country here."
Yeah. No, my favorite part of New Brunswick though is that everywhere in New Brunswick that you go has like 3 or 4 different names. Depending on who you are, who you're with, and who you're talking to is what you're going to call that area. Like if you're traveling up to like we'll say up by Charter Settlement, um, if if you're talking to somebody who doesn't know what Charter Settlement is, that's just outside Fredericton. Um, if you're talking to someone who's a little more familiar with the area, who's like in New Brunswick, you might say it's Gornish. Or if they're not from around there, you might have to actually call it Russagonish, which is how it's spelled, so they can find it on a sign. But just like Upper Queenstown is Pleasant Villa, the Bog, uh,
Road. That whole the river road in general, it's like you've got little tiny community signs that pop up saying that you're in a place, but then even within those places, they'll have like further divisions,
yeah,
names for it that like literally it's not registered with any mail carrier. Certain like it means nothing to anybody but the people that live there that they live in this like little, you know.
yeah.
So
You're not from Queenstown. You're from Pleasant Villa. Looking at you, Mike.
yeah, I'm not from here. I'm from 3 kilometers that way on the exact same road. We can see each other. But
Yeah, I've thrown rocks at his cow,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I
on
can
the
kind
river.
of get that. That always used to be a running joke for me with like places like Byron here in London, like outside of London. It's like Byron is like a little tiny town where if you're going one way down baseline, you're in London. If you go the other way down baseline, you're in Byron, and it's like, come the fuck on, you're in London. Stop.
Speaking of the wife in St. John, though, next weekend she's going to be there for Fog City Con. Are you tracking that at all?
Ben, I know a few people that are like you're talking about the derby, like roller derby stuff, right?
No, it's like a Comic Con thing.
Oh no, I had no idea.
I didn't know there was a roller derby thing going on. That's cool.
Yeah, there's like roller derby league stuff, and I'm pretty sure they're called the Fog City Rollers, I think. So yeah.
Oh shit. Well, now we both learned something today.
Oh yeah, I don't follow them closely enough either. I love this community, but my head's been so buried for the last like 2 years, basically.
No.
Barely come up for air.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, so I was saying it's on this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at St. John. Yeah.
Where at?
Don't know. She'll write it here. But yeah, I like Mac. He's saying I'm just gonna go visit my neighbor. 15-minute drive later, you get to your neighbor. Yeah, that's pretty much how growing up, me and Eric, our like Eric, you were what, a 15-minute bike drive away from my place, I'd say.
In from my parents' front door to Anthony's front door, which was like just barely past Doug's place, was 5K.
Yeah.
So the only reason I know that is because I literally ran everywhere I went for basically 12 until I was like 17, 18. So
Yeah, if anyone ever played like the old Morrowind when you used to raise your athletics by running everywhere, that was basically just Eric.
yeah.
Is that actually how it works though? I hear that cardio only takes you so far.
Yeah, to a point.
You can't flex cardio, bro. And Sarah says it's at the St. John Free Library, Fog City Comic Con.
Oh,
Does St. John have a not free library?
yeah.
That like legitimate question? Like aren't all libraries publicly funded and free?
No, there's the premium library. You only get to when you beat the boss in fucking lower fucking
You got
South Side St. John.
Librarian.
Yeah.
Because like I'm even legitimately trying to think about it. I think that even if you are not a student of Western University, you're allowed to go to the library and look at the books. I just don't think you're allowed to take them out if you're not a registered student, which would make sense to me. That would be fine.
Possibly.
I'm just now curious if they're private, well, like outside of like in someone's home, if there are private libraries.
Sure, there probably is. Assume like legal offices would probably have like libraries.
Yeah, but the thing about having a legal library is that anything that's in a legal book would have to be on the public record anyway, which means that I should be able to find it somewhere else, whether it be in their library or not. Huh. Damn it, Doug, now your wife has asked me intriguing questions I must find the answers to later.
So, one of the I had booze questions for you. I gotta pull it up again. But one of the booze questions I have for you, because I'm gonna promo my buddy at the same time.
I've got it. You grab the bottle, I'll ask the question.
Oh.
So Doug has a bottle from Black Galley Distillery. It's a
Yeah,
bottle of
this stuff.
rum. It's a shout out to his buddy Lloyd. They're a local Fredericton business.
Yeah.
So he wants to know what a good nerd-themed drink that he could make with it would be.
Yeah, because
Lots of things. Something like I think people often overlook or just aren't aware of in like the cocktail world is that just because a common recipe is known for a certain type of alcohol, a certain spirit, that doesn't mean you're not allowed to use others.
Mm-hmm.
So I function in ratios based on families of cocktails. So there's a bunch of different families of cocktails. They all have specific types of ingredients, and those specific types of ingredients are in a ratio in relation to each other, and that's what dictates the family of cocktail, the style of cocktail. For example, like what typically referred to as an old fashioned culturally is water, sugar, bitters, and spirit. It doesn't have to be bourbon at all. As a matter of fact, the kind of first versions of that cocktail would have actually been cognac based and very unlikely to have been a whiskey at all. So you can do whatever you want with it. Like currently, I started making these little cocktail kits. Actually, my laptop's sitting on a bunch of them right now because I'm delivering them to a distillery this week. So these are little teeny tiny cocktail kits. They hold 6 ounces of booze, and they basically have ingredients in them that are going to rehydrate and a source of sugar that's going to dissolve into the booze and give you a little cocktail. So this one's my Foggy Cove Tropical Rum Old Fashioned.
Ooh, nice.
So yeah, it's fun. It's got cinnamon, it's got raw sugar, orange, dehydrated Amarena cherries, and pineapple. So you throw that in, it's going to soak it up. Stir it the next day. Pour it over some ice. You can stir it again if you want it to be watered down a bit. Most people do. Some of us don't give a fuck. That's it's an old fashioned, and again, most people expecting like whiskey. So in the case of that particular rum, it's my opinion that every product has its place. My job is finding a use for it in its place. That particular rum, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to try it myself. I've known Lloyd for quite a while as well. He's one of the original organizers of the Fredericton Craft Beer Festival, which I've been attending for years, and great guy. Yeah, could easily just swap it out for the rum in A Dark and Stormy. So, instead of using Gosling's Black Seal rum, which is what's called for, especially with that one, because it's actually the national beverage of Bermuda, so it's like a trademarked cocktail. But you could do exactly use 2 ounces of that rum over some ice, you throw some ginger beer over top, and you're technically done. Again, they've kind of laid claim to that drink, but at the end of the day, what it is a version of a buck. So there's this cocktail gin buck, and it's gin and lime and ginger beer.
Nice.
you can do whatever you want there. You can use gin, you can use bourbon. I've actually got a bourbon buck going out on my menu this week with peach and basil, right?
Nice.
So once you figure out your ratios, then you can start kind of just playing around with the flavor profiles, selecting sugars that have been modified to have a certain flavor or a certain aromatic component, or altering the acid content in your lemon juice because you want to achieve a different effect, you know. So there's so many possibilities.
That was one of the things I just recently tried because I've slowly become more and more of a gin guy. I fucking love gin. But I had first of all anything with citrus and basil in gin is just amazing, top notch stuff.
Yeah,
But,
on the gin, you can make something that's like exceptional.
oh yeah, but my so Sarah just started making lilac simple syrup out of the lilac in our yard, and so I did that with some iced soda water and I can't remember the name of the gin that she got me, but just awesome, awesome shit. So
You could probably pull the same thing off with that rum, honestly. I mean, me again, I think it's a bit darker.
yeah, it's a little
It's
bit
not
darker.
amber color to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, you can make a daiquiri with that, and not like a blended daiquiri, like a shaken daiquiri, just like lime juice, sugar. Throw some of that in to a shaker with some ice. If you don't have a shaker, use a mason jar with a lid. I'd use Tupperware containers that just have like a really good snap lid on them. You know, whatever you've got that'll seal. Trick to like a really good daiquiri is water content, so it's like shaking it long enough to melt a bit of the ice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's a 2-1-1 typically in ratio. So 2 parts alcohol, 1 part citrus, 1 part sugar. So in that case, I would just use 2 parts of my rum, so 2 ounces of rum, 1 ounce of lime juice, and 1 ounce of your simple syrup. Like the was it lilac that you
Lilac,
did?
yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and just shake it like you hate it on some ice, and you're good to go.
Well, I know I'm celebrating fucking this stream tonight when I'm done. But, yeah. So I was telling, because Terry, funny enough,
All right, I was gonna say I don't have anything near as nice. I've got like a couple of shots of Gibson left. What have you got for me?
Gibson's great. I mean, like I love a good rye. And as a matter of fact, most whiskey drinkers, people who like really pride themselves on their like whiskey drinking, they're typically one of bulked into one of two. A lot of Irish whiskey drinkers too. So any Irish whiskey drinker listening is just going to be like pissed off at me for saying this, but I feel like they mostly bulk into either bourbon or Scotch drinkers. Whiskey is lovely. It's not my thing personally, but I know lots of people who love it. I'll still drink it and enjoy it. For me, it's the subtlety of exploring the flavors more than the repeated consumption. So, like, you know, Irish whiskey is inherently very interesting, but that's not what we're discussing. So, you know, you've got those two main families. Whereas, like myself, I like a really gritty, raw, like a big, sharp Canadian rye. Gagetown definitely shows up in me. Royal Reserve is one of my favorites. The old rough and ready. I swear by it for making whiskey sours. I would say nice whiskey sour. You've got a couple ounces left there. Take you a few minutes to prepare the ingredients, but it's super worth it. You've got a nice gritty, grassy, peppery rye there. So what I would do is take 2 ounces of that, 2 ounces of fresh squeezed lemon juice. You want to pass that through a strainer so you don't have a bunch of pulp in it. A 1-1 ratio simple syrup. Simple syrup is so easy to make. It's even in the name, right? And people always get really intimidated by it. The way that I do it for consistency is I weigh my ingredients. I've got a little scale. So I'll weigh out 500 grams, which is a lot, so don't do that much. Say like 100 grams of white sugar if you're going to do this for yourself. Put it into a container. You boil some water. boiling water, you're just going to put your container back onto the scale and bring it back to 0 with the sugar still in it, and you just add 100 grams of the boiling water and then stir it until the sugar's dissolved. If that comes back down to like a usable temperature, like room temperature, ideally you're storing it in the fridge, so if it's fridge temperature, great, and you've got a simple syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Literally that easy. It's just sugar and water equal parts. A lot of people will boil it. Don't boil it. You're concentrating the sugar, then it's not a 1-to-1 anymore. So a lot of your recipes are going to be thrown off, like sweetness. Why you're going to make them sweeter than what's actually being called for. Preference dictates consumption. So if you like it sweeter, then go for it. Do whatever you want to enjoy, right? So we've got 2 parts. So 2 ounces of your rye, 1.5 ounces of fresh squeezed lemon juice, 1.5 ounces of your 1-to-1 simple syrup, and then a fresh egg white. If you're vegan or vegetarian or whatever, you're not
So
doing
what
egg.
if you just don't like egg? Because that's honestly what it is for me. Is I have no problem with like French toast or anything like that, but I don't like eggs.
Worried about this one all the time, and I've seen many people have the same reaction. You're not going to be like drinking a glass of raw eggs. That's not how it
No,
works.
and I fully understand that. It's never been for me.
Happening is you're creating almost like a ceviche egg white. You're creating like a meringue, a ceviche meringue. It's incredibly good for that cocktail, but if you want to avoid the egg altogether, there are alternatives. So you got a can of like chickpea kicking around. Crack that sucker open. Take some of the liquid that's in the chickpea can. It's called aquafaba. Replace it with so instead of doing your egg white, use like 3/4 of an ounce of aquafaba. You could do a little bit less or a little bit more. It's kind of your preference, and you're going to get a similar result.
Okay.
I like white because there's some chemical things happening there as well. You're actually basically activating a chemical reaction in the lemon juice that would typically activate itself on your palate. Sour things are sour, especially like citric acids and malic acid. What's happening is there's ionized hydrogen. That ionized hydrogen oxidizes once it meets your palate, and it's the act of oxidation of it shedding an electron that's actually producing what your brain is interpreting as sour. So the egg white will actually help break down some of that. It'll help oxidize some of the hydrogen in the lemon juice and make it less acidic, make it less sharp. Like softens the blow on the tummy from the fresh citrus juice. The trick to a really good sour is something dry shake. You'll hear some bartenders say, the reverse dry shake. Chemical reaction when you do that. How you do it and you swear by it and you're getting good results, then do how you're getting the results. But in my opinion, it's a waste of time. So I just do a regular dry shake. So all the ingredients go into the shaker with no ice, and we give it a couple of good whips in the shaker. You don't have to sit there and shake it all day. 10, one is down, 2 is on the way back up. So 5 shakes, you're good to go. Open that shaker up. You add a nice big healthy scoop of ice. The biggest difference between the cocktails that professionals are going to make in the bars and you're going to make for yourself at home is that we don't shy away from using ice, and you do because you have a limited amount in your fridge. So you're more cautious. It's like, well, I don't want to use all of my ice on this one drink.
So I've got an ice machine, so I'm actually set for that. I can go ahead and use as much ice as I need to.
The trick is using lots of ice. So you fill your shaker tin up with ice and you shake it again. This time you want to be pretty vigorous. You want to let it know that you mean business. So you want to shake it until you get a nice little frosty layer on the outside of your shaker tin. After that, I typically strain mine over fresh ice. Anytime you're going to use egg white or even the aquafaba, or there are some other alternatives as well. There's all like basically artificial. I don't want to call them artificial because they're typically derived from plants, but you've got these little foamers that are vegan friendly that literally come in a little eye counter, like an eyedropper bottle. They affect the aromatics a lot. So anytime you're going to do an egg white cocktail or one of their substitutes, make sure you use a strong aromatic across the top of the glass. So where you're using that really lovely, and it's got all these peppery qualities, one of my favorite things to do is just use fresh cracked black pepper across the top. It's a really sharp aromatic and complements the rye that's already in the glass.
It's dope as hell.
I'm just sitting there comprehending all of the things that went into that, and it's like, holy shit! Like, I should have paid way more attention to high school chemistry.
Well, you know what? It's not even that. Like, I did horrible in school. I become fixated on this industry. I'm just lucky that I've been able to maintain level of that fixation for years and found new focuses when my interest was starting to dwindle, but like within the industry. So I fell in love with beer, and then I shifted towards actually really with like nightclubs, and then kind of started exploring wine, found beer to be more interesting, shifted into beer. It's evolution that I've been playing around with since high school. So I mean, I graduated 20 years ago this year, and it's been 20 years of basically just exploring my palate through beverage. And at first, it was more social party, and as time went on, it was more about the creative process. And as I made that transition, I'm conscious revelation of it. I knew that it was happening. I made that conscious decision. I was going to be a bartender. I was going to work in the service industry as a career. I was done looking for my real job. What are you going to go to school for? When are you going to get a real job? And I gave up on that idea. In the morning, I didn't hate going to work. I enjoyed what I was working with. I made decent money. And I sat there for hours a day listening to people complain about their lives and their jobs, working in stuff like that. And I realized, like, I want to listen to them telling me I need to get a real job when I'm also the one listening to them complain about their miserable life.
Yeah, that's not something to be lost on. Like, that's how I've kind of found my way, stumbled throughout entertainment. Is it's never been like a direct line. It's always kind of been like you just kind of work your way from one place to the next. Like, this is where my interest lies in this moment, and then you kind of just pivot and work your way through it.
I'm notoriously focused. Definitely, I don't bounce around with my interests at all, uh, which is why I started doing a podcast a month ago. Yeah, I find this kind of thing that though it feeds into something that I always enjoyed doing back in high school and even middle school. And Eric, you attest to this. Is that I always enjoyed just meeting people, talking to people, learning people's life story. I've always been about that shit. I know for an incredibly nerdy, awkward looking fucking dude, I was somehow both introverted as shit and also the first person to talk to people in a room. It was
all right. So here's one from chat. Eric, we're gonna get you to rate this drink. Mac is going to. He's currently making a drink out of Ricardo coconut rum, pineapple juice, and the syrup from red sour pitted cherries. It's gonna go over ice. How do you think that's gonna turn out?
He's using products that are easy to mask in a sense. So like coconut rum in general tends to be a bit on the sweeter side. It's artificially flavored. So you're already dying down some of the like heat of the alcohol right there. Like you can even pour most of those products on ice and sip away at them pretty easily enough. Pineapple juice is another one that's like really well known for like its ability to cover things up and to like be a dominant flavor and a dominant aromatic in a glass. I would caution him to taste the liquid of the cherries first and make sure that it's not like super sweet, because he's using a sweet liquor, he's using a sweet juice, and then if you're adding sugar on top of that, it could easily become like basically just a glass of sugar, which preference, like I said, preference dictates consumption. Said it earlier. You'll hear me say it to customers every night that I'm open. So if that's your thing, like rock and roll. But you might want to out another source of acidity potentially. Also, something really fun to do with pineapple juice. It froths up really, really well. So give it a shake, like your drink, once you've settled on the kind of ratio you want to have in your glass for yourself. Give it a good shake just to see what happens. It'll foam up and makes a lovely foam. It's a great kind of it gives an effect that looks similar to egg white. It doesn't last as long and it'll deteriorate more quickly, but it is relatively stable. So you can get a nice foam and it's pretty. It's a great presentation.
What would you recommend that the average person would have in their home that they could use to maybe add a little bit of acidity and cut down on some of that sweetness?
Even if you've just got a bottle of that little lemon juice, the little yellow things, they'll work. Fresh is always best.
Yep.
Like always best. I say that, although there's some rules with using citrus too, depending on what you're making. A thought that like lemon juice, for example, especially for certain cocktails, is actually best at around the 24-hour mark.
Like obviously, like chemistry is chemistry. It will always do weird things.
It's a whole other like nerd ball game. That's when you start getting into little altar over here that looks over top of the entire bar, and sitting on it is David Arnold's Liquid Intelligence. So this guy will get into like some of the wildest techniques, and one of my favorite lines from him is that, and I'm paraphrasing, but that I am willing to waste an inordinate amount of time to make a very minute improvement on my cocktail.
Yep.
When we're talking about the lemon juice like that and fresh being best and when it's not. But yeah, at the end of the day, the little thing of yellow lemon liquid that you get at the superstore will totally work. Things like shrubs with vinegars, but they're harder to control, especially for most people. So I wouldn't recommend using vinegars, although it is something that you can do. Apple cider vinegar in some cocktails. And you really nice balance between the pineapple and some apple cider vinegar. It's just like it's a bit trickier to get the balance right and something that you're going to enjoy.
Nice. Yeah.
There's this really interesting concept called the 11. I believe it's called the 11 bottle bar. Could have that number wrong. Should be easy enough for somebody to Google and find it. But it's a concept that kind of outlines what bottles you would want to have in your home to give you the most amount of options when providing for a group of people or for a guest. Anybody who wants to kind of explore that or is wondering like, what should I have on hand? I think that's probably your best way to go, because it just gives you a ton of options, and liquor is very stable. So most of the time it can just sit on your shelf. There's a few things like vermouths and stuff that we recommend you use a bit faster. You don't want to let it sit too long. And you really shouldn't be letting it on your shelf. Put it in the fridge. But they explain that within that theory.
Yeah. I just had a very bad flashback to living with Mike and Caleb when we were doing shots of like 8-month-old vermouth.
So that's actually a question that
time.
I've got. Like, liquor bottles do not have a best before date, and you always hear people say, like, I've had this liquor in my family, passed down through generations. It's like, at what point does liquor go bad? Does liquor go bad?
Oxidizes. I'm gonna have to move. Sorry, gents, my battery's
not
plugged in over here. So it dies over time, and that means that the flavors are going to change. So that's the biggest concern, is the change of flavor. It's not really going to go bad. If you start to get like flaking, so you've got sediment that's like pooling in the bottle, you might want to start reassessing drinking. 2 seconds while I plug this in.
Yeah, not at all. Check
for the most part
for floaties at the bottom while he says that.
You're dealing with like whiskey there, so you're minimum 40% alcohol by volume. I think as long as you're over 30%, it's going to be really, really stable. If you're under 30%, there's typically a lot of sugar in it. Sugar is also a natural preservative. So again, unless you're starting to get like a major change in the coloration, if you're starting to get like any kind of clumping, or if you can look at it and it almost looks like there's like a very minute like element floating in it, that something's going wrong in the bottle. It's probably a sign of mold. One of the best tricks that I use, especially for my syrups and my juices and items that are inherently not carbonated but that have the potential to go bad, when I open them, I listen. If I get a release of CO2, release of air, if there's bubbles in it, then it's no good, right? We don't even have to smell it or taste it at that point. We already know it's going bad. So that's a great way to kind of tell. But again, with the whiskey that you've got there and most spirits, they're going to be good like a long time. Even if they oxidize, it's still very consumable. It's still alcohol. You might evaporate some of the alcohol. Some of the alcohol might actually evaporate and get replaced with like just a water content from the atmosphere up to a certain point, but it stalls out after a while. Like it can only do that so much. I think it would probably top out in the like 30s is probably about as low as it's going to be able to go.
So realistically, you might lose a little bit of alcohol content. You're going to lose out on some flavor. That's the big thing. But otherwise, like it's not going to hurt you at all.
Oh, that's it.
I did bother to look it up just because you were unsure. It is the 12 bottle bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Really great theory, great concept. I mean, I'm clearly not using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I've bottles on bottles on bottles, and like this is for 12 seats, right? I'm looking to a massive amount of variety so that I have more tools. My paints.
Well, no, but that's the thing is that the truth is that you could have two Canadian rye whiskeys sitting next to each other on the shelf, and those two rye whiskeys, while being the same base inherent drink, are going to taste different based on whatever has happened between the aging process, however long it's been left in the barrel, whatever ingredients they used, aromatics, whatever.
They're all
So
inherently different, so even if I prepare them exactly the same way, there's still going to be some base differences.
exactly. So it makes absolute sense that for especially what you're trying to achieve, that never having that, well, I could have gone for moment, it makes sense that you would want the widest possible range of flavors and profiles to play with.
So one of the
Challenge here in New Brunswick, because I mean, you're in Ontario, so it's kind of the same. Like you're forced to purchase from the province. So
Yep.
In your case, it's the LCBO. In my case, it's the ANBL. I do a lot of my shopping through one particular store. It's the only store that has the ability to kind of import some of its own products in a limited amount, but like so they get some unique products. So I go to Moncton to get products all the time, but there's some products that I just can't get, and it can be really, really frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit more open up in that regard with the conservative government that's currently in place. We are starting to see a little bit more privatization in regards to people being able to bring things in and like wine, like because now Walmart can sell beer and stuff like that. So it's only a matter of time, I think, until we start seeing, specific dealers, which I think will be awesome. I would love nothing more than for there to be a nice like whiskey distillery downtown where I could go in and they could import from across the country, various Canadian products. Like I understand not wanting to branch outside of Canada. I understand the unwillingness of the government to import from other countries or whatever based on whatever regulations they've got. But I mean, there are so many good products from out west or out east that I know I'm just missing out on that I never get to experience.
Alcohol, like there's so many different like there's so much variety, and like that's one of my favorite things to do when traveling is seeking out small privately owned liquor stores, because you never know what you're going to find, especially when it's a privately owned one. If it's a generationally owned liquor store on top of that, like they've got bottles and cases that like didn't sell out like 40 years ago. They've just been sitting on a shelf collecting dust. And I mean, sometimes it's just absolute gold. Like it's product that didn't write bells in time and didn't really have that initial success, but that stuck around in the market long enough that they eventually became a really big deal. And now they're sought after product, and some of the little roundabout things that they did back in the day that nobody's even aware of, that you just find that random one bottle on a dusty shelf and it's just like hitting the lottery, right? So
See, I don't have that much luck when it comes to that. I remember when I was in Cyprus, we stopped in at this one restaurant, and he's like, "Hey, we have this stuff. It's called Slovenia. If you want to try it." I'm like, okay, cool. What's that? As he's pouring us the shots, he's like, "Well, you know, when you take wine and you make grapes, like, or you stomp grapes, you make wine." I'm like, yeah. He's like, "What you have left over, you distill, and you get this." We're like,
That sounds
okay.
awful. I'm not even getting like that. It doesn't sound like it would be good at all.
Yeah, there was a warning
so
there.
in Italy, it's called grappa, and
Yep.
most wine producing countries will have a version of it. But the Greek islands in general are notorious for making horrendous versions of it.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
My buddy.
Category is like a brandy or a cognac in a sense,
Yeah.
right?
Well, he said, he's like, yeah, my grandfather, he had 2 shots of this every day. We're like, how long did he live? 30?
15.
This is like drinking a Zippo lighter, man.
No, my buddy, when he was on tour, my buddy Alan, he's a current serving member of the CAF. He went to Latvia on a tour of duty a couple of years ago, and he sent us back all these chocolates, all these European chocolates. A lot of them were really nice. However, some of them were chocolate balls filled with black balsam. That fucking bastard.
Yeah.
That absolute dick. Because he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
A form of Greek wine called retsina, and they use like a pine tar of some sort to like seal up these like wooden tankards and they age the wine in it.
I swear to fuck, what I drank was pine tar. That sounds about right. That's about what black balsam is.
Like soaks into the wine, right? Like it's acquired taste. One I wish that I could acquire literally anytime somebody's like, "Oh, it's an acquired taste." I'm like, man, it's weird. I really want to find an appreciation for that thing because somebody else is enjoying it. But Retsina's a tough one.
Yeah. So when you're talking about your 12 bottles, one bottle that I always make sure that 2 bottles, but they're always in my cupboard, is Di Zerano and Creme de Caco. And that's another one that I blame you on, is Creme de Caco, because you're the one that introduced me when we were 12 to Creme de Caco and Creme de Menthe.
Yeah. Probably doing like brown cows, like creme de cacao and milk.
Yeah. That's
so
what
Mac
I still do. So I turned it into like an ice cream float, but it's like like creme de cacao, Di Zerano, and then vanilla ice cream, and toss that in a blender. It's fucking delicious. But yeah, we made that at a barbecue, and I started feeding my friend's wife that, and she was supposed to drive home. So he's like, "Yeah, I can finally drink." After about a half an hour, she shows us like her empty like giant mug. She's like, "More, please." And Bert's like, "So I guess I don't get to drink tonight." Awesome. But they're delicious, and that's fully your fault. Those ones. That, and I remember stealing Bailey's out of the fridge too.
Oh, Bailey's is gross. Bailey's is so gross.
The amount of Baileys that we've drunk just out of the fridge, like
that is so disgusting.
We'll drink 3.
It's not good.
Yeah, we'll just have 3 shots of Baileys.
I had someone. I remember the first time someone
on a Thursday. No,
I remember the
that's-
first time someone tried to get me to try tequila rose, and I was like, they were like, "This is great! Like, I just drink this right out of the bottle." And I tried it. I was like, "You drink this out of the bottle?" It's like, why don't you just drink fucking Pepto? Mac posted a picture of his drink in the tabletop talk section, Doug. It
Yes.
looks really good. Final ingredients used were 1 ounce lemon juice, 2 ounces of rum, quarter teaspoon of the cherry syrup, and finished off with the pineapple juice.
Yeah. And he foamed her all up, just like you said. Too.
Yeah, he gave it a
He
good
did
shake. It looks
decent.
really good.
Job, buddy.
Where's mine?
I love when people like take this stuff like when somebody openly asks for a recipe to something, everybody around them kind of like looks funny at them. None of my are secret. None of these techniques are secret. There's so many books on the subject. Like I have hundreds of reference books. Between like what I do and what you're going to do at your home bar, as I mentioned, like one of the overall differences is just the quality and quantity of ice that we're using. But like really, at the end of the day, the biggest differences in what I do, even compared to like other people in my industry, is I am willing to go the extra mile with my ingredient. I'm willing to go through a very create an outcome. And I'll tell you how I did it, but the chances of you wanting to reproduce it are very rare. And that's kind of what has set me apart, I think, from most other bartenders that do what I'm doing is, you know, for example, I don't make Caesars very often. Cocktails that people order out of habit, safety blankets. And for the Maritimer at large, the Caesar is one of those. I tend to just not have the ingredients on hand to make it because I want you to be a little more adventurous when you're in my space than going with your safe bet. Same reason why I don't carry a lot of mint or I don't carry mint very often. So, you know, yeah, I make a nice mojito. Yes, mojito is a nice drink. Too safe, right?
Oh.
My Caesar, for example. Sorry, to get back on track. I lost track of where I was going with that. I make my own Worcestershire sauce. So
Oh my God.
the recipe itself is 17 ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which when with like a blend of spices and acids and like umami based flavors, so like soy and fish sauce and stuff like that. It doesn't take long to like build up that 17 ingredients. But the first ingredient that's in that list, it contains 20 ingredients and it takes me 2 months to make it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So you're unlikely to reproduce it purely because of the commitment involved in doing it. And so like I've set myself up in a space that I can commit that time and I can actively supervise these processes and make sure that I'm getting the result that I want and that everything's being done safely and you know, and cleanly. At the end of the day, it's not a secret.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think it's a good thing, realistically, though, that you keep those more basic cocktails off the menu too. Not even necessarily because they're people's safety nets. It's one of those things where when you're doing what you do specifically, and you're enhancing the flavor profiles the way you are, and you're going that extra mile, like you make your own Worcester style, whatever sauce,
Fail on the
however the
word, Terry.
fuck
Just
you
fail on
say
it.
that word. I've never gotten that one right. I've never. It has
It was
never
the
been a
best
good
of
one for me.
shires. It was the
It
worst of shire.
it was a shire. It had sauce.
Yeah, so the Wambaster
It's
sauce.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, when you go to that kind of length, the thing is that if you were to go get a Caesar anywhere else with if I went to my local bar and I got a Caesar, they're going to be using Tabasco sauce. They're going to be using basic ingredients. Like you'll have even curated the perfect liquors to be going with the sauce. Like that type of thing will never be met again. So it's one of those things where even if you were to allow them to pick their safety, you'd be doing them a disservice by letting them know their safety is never going to be their safety again anywhere else.
Yeah,
And I mean, I'll still bring those drinks out every once in a while because I like those drinks. And I'm not saying I don't. I do. It's a matter of principle. I even I have often contemplated, although this becomes very difficult to do because with those other cocktails mentioned, I can just not have the ingredients on hand. And then when someone asks, I don't have to be like, I don't have to, it's not that I'm not trying to give them what they want. I physically don't have the ingredient. And I know that in some ways goes against my desire to be like super flexible and accommodating. But it's also for kind of a reason. I want you to feel experimental when you're in this space. But the old fashioned.
Yep.
One of those drinks that, especially a certain category of guy, tends to order as a safety blanket, but I can't say no to you because you know that I have whiskey on the shelf. You know that I've got literally 30, probably close to 50 bitters up there. Surely one will work for an old fashioned, and there's multiple different kinds of sugar kicking around, and so I have those ingredients on hand no matter what. But that's another one that kind of gets me a little bit sometimes, where I'm just like I know that you're ordering that because it's your safe space, and I can appreciate it. But
And you see, that's the thing that I like about myself is I usually, when I go out, I don't order cocktails. I'll order mixed drinks. So even if I were to go somewhere like your space and I were to say an old fashioned, with whiskey being my preferred liquor, I'm still in a safe space, but I'm still experimental enough in the fact that I generally just don't do cocktails in general.
what I'm talking about is the one person who just orders.
No, I know exactly who you're talking about.
I feel like that's the drink equivalent of someone coming in and like to a high end restaurant and ordering mac and cheese. Like just we get
I'll
it.
get the spaghetti and meatballs
Like
at the
Don't get me
Italian
wrong.
place.
I'm really proud of my old fashioned. Like the one that I present to people, unless they make a specification. It's an old fashioned that I've been doing for, I want to say, 7 or 8 years now. I'm very consistent in the method of preparation. I use a professional freezing, which sounds really fancy for what it is. It's literally just putting water in a cooler with no lid on it before you put it in the freezer. So you're forcing the water to freeze in one continual direction. It pushes all the impurities to the bottom. And then I remove this block of ice, I release the bubble of impurities, and then what I'm left with after I kind of clean it up is a big slab of ultra clear ice. So I hand carve high density ice for all of my old fashions. So what you're getting is very elaborate, but at the end of the day, I still feel like it's a safety blanket for some people.
Oh, no, exactly, yeah.
The only reason that I try to shy away from those drinks is that I believe very strongly in creating a wow moment.
Mhm.
I think that there's certain circumstances that allow you to create a wow moment. And I think they're specific to the service industry. I think it's in general through your life. If you want to create a wow moment, there's something to every single one of those moments that you've ever had in your life, and that's being a little apprehensive, a little unsure of what's about to happen. If you are expecting the thing that arrives in front of you, or that you're observing, or whatever it is, then it cannot be a surprise.
Mhm.
You cannot have a wow moment when your expectations have dictated what is about to happen. And then if all I do is give you exactly the expectation, there's been no wow moment. You're satisfied, sure, you're content with what you have, but that's not a wow. So for most people, I try to compare it to like being, a stupid teenager and leaning. Although I'd probably still do it now if I was in a classroom setting. But you lean back on your chair and you've got it on 2 legs, and that time where you back a little bit too far and you kind of like give the wobble and you're like, holy shit, and your heart's going, right?
Mhm.
That's a wow moment.
Yep.
That off guard, you're not expecting it. Something happens that you just did not anticipate, and boom, you light up. And seeing that look on somebody's face of like trying one of my creations for the first time and watching them go like, wow, and the eyes like light up, and sometimes they either look at me or they look at a friend, or they'll even stop for a second and like look at the drink, like what the fuck did I just put in my mouth? And that reaction is why I've continued to stay in this industry. It's the part of it that I've fallen in love with, and the reason why I do what I do.
So for a night at the bar, then, I guess the question is, like, the average patron comes in, you only have 12 seats. Is there like a questionnaire that you have them fill out to get to your approximations? Because, like, I know some places that do that kind of thing, and that would lean very heavily to the type of thing you're trying to do. But, like, how do you even arrive at, what is safe or unsafe for somebody?
Very like Japanese in kind of, I guess, approach. And so to not have a menu at all.
Okay.
The market is like fully comfortable with it here in New Brunswick yet. I wish they were, but I just don't think they're ready for it. There's
Yep.
definitely some places like it in Canada already, mostly in bigger cities. But
I'm
that
just gonna say though, you could do that in a section of Toronto, and you might be able to get away with it. But there are even other sections of Toronto where we just would not play. So I totally get it.
it's more about a series of questions. So what I do is by asking a series of questions that are very calculated, like it's the same questions every time. I am, first of all, gaining a sense of your current expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking down your expectations so that you don't have anything firm to stand on anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm effectively creating this illusion where you're literally like I'm taking your expectation and I'm breaking it apart.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can no longer look at it as a cohesive thing. So by asking my questions, I'm going to basically dial in on what type of cocktail is your ideal cocktail. Are you that person that does want the old fashioned, that is looking for something that's spirit forward? The alcohol is more or less one of the only actors on the stage, and it's very bold and upfront and very noticeable. Am I safe to kind of round off the edges of the alcohol and kind of put a couple more actors on the stage, a few more things to the forefront, soften the edges of the alcohol so that it's not standing center stage, but maybe it's standing back a little bit and it's got some friends, you know what I mean? Or are you the person who doesn't want to taste the alcohol at all? If I leave a bit of aromatics from the alcohol behind, you're probably going to be okay, but you don't want to be able to have any of the heat or any of the bitterness that's associated with alcohol. Volume drink. Once I've determined that you want one of those three, well, then let's say that it was a volume drink. Well, now I can go, okay, well, do you want something that is carbonated? Mm-hmm. Not carbonated. So if you select carbonated, well, now I've eliminated a whole group of ingredients that are no longer relevant to making a carbonated beverage. If you say that you want something that isn't carbonated, but you also don't want it to be super sour, I've eliminated all of my carbonated liquids. I've eliminated certain ratios of acidic elements, or even eliminated some of them completely, depending on whatever preferences they've stated at that point. So once I've guided you into a type or a family of cocktail, then it's just a matter of dialing in on range of flavor. So oftentimes, I'll ask, well, okay, like we're still in the, this juicy category. Do you want something that is herbal? Do you want something that is more on the fruity side? Do you want something that's more citric? And so by asking them these questions, I'm getting them to essentially pick their own cocktail, but they're telling me what they want through the flavor rather than trying to explain a drink that they had 10 years ago that some dude made that means nothing to them or to me, right? Mm-hmm. Their expectation, but they weren't even sure what their expectations weren't anymore. But by answering those questions, I now know exactly what their expectations are. So I can give the expectation and create that wow moment.
Nice. So just to answer Mac for myself, hey, you had that question. What are your thoughts on the Burt Reynolds, both the mustache and the drink? The drink, I don't know. The mustache, fantastic.
The mustache is fantastic. Yeah. The Burt Reynolds I haven't made in years. I don't even remember what's in it right now. Give me 2 seconds.
So I was gonna say we got Google at our fingertips. We could look that up.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm on it. Let's see.
But so funnily enough, when I mentioned having you on, Terry was saying like one of the things that he was looking into back in the day was being a mixologist, and I was like, oh yeah, no, Eric has been doing this kind of shit for years, just even back when. And then I remember when you used to juggle when you were younger. Um, did you find that like when you were working in nightclubs and everything that your juggling and your bartending flair and everything like did that sort of go together?
In order to be like a flair bartender, like in full, you really have to be in a place that's accepting of it and that is like pushing it. That's what they want out of you. In most standard nightclubs, everything's volume driven. So if you're on the bar and you're basically effectively you're in the hot seat, your success is actually being calculated in drinks served per minute. Your job very long if you're fucking around with flair too much because you're not serving enough drinks and the bar's 8 deep and like the manager wants you to like dial in seconds a drink, like if that, like get them out, like go, right? Like 6 drinks a minute, just just cranking them out. That's where they want you to be. And that's incredibly taxing, incredibly difficult to do. So the reason why I'm not really in nightclubs anymore. However, working especially like on the floor in nightclubs and being able to, I guess, dial back on that volume driven atmosphere a little bit, it has served me really well. Also just turn of phrases serving really well to make more money. So I mean, yeah, whether it be like juggling or flipping trays with drinks on it, spinning trays, spinning wet bar towels, anything that kind of adds a little bit of a show for the customer. Even just like instead of pouring liquid like directly in, like raising it up before coming back down, just that little tiny bit can go a long way, and it's the same amount of time, right? So there's certain things you can do to improve the show without slowing yourself down too much that can work in a lot of places. I've made a lot of extra money over the years by goofing off and like using some of those circus skills, whether they be like the contortion moves and stuff like that. As I said, turn of phrase has always been kind of one of my favorite ways to kind of fuck with customers and get a few extra bucks.
So
favorite back in the day would be they would order a bottle of wine from me. I'd bring the bottle of wine over with their glasses, and there's especially in these settings, you got a pitcher of water somewhere on the table, and I'd always make sure that was like ready to go anyway for this particular particular scenario. And I'd show up with this closed bottle, the foil's still on top of the wine bottle. I've got the corkscrew in my hand, and I'd be like, "I'll bet you $20 if I can take a drink out of this bottle without popping the cork." The amount of times that people didn't make the bet was negligible.
Mm-hmm.
I would proceed to flip the bottle over. There's a big concave bottom on every wine bottle. I'd grab the pitcher of water, fill that little concave area on the bottom of the bottle with water, and then take a drink. I just drank out of the bottle without popping the cork. And 9 times they'd follow through and they'd give me $20.
Nice.
Yep, that's some good stuff. It's good, solid, playable humor.
That just rings
Lots
to
of
your
little
father
things like
though.
that.
I remember your old man would get us with like bar tricks when we were fucking like 10 years old, like the matchstick tricks and shit. He like old school bar tricks.
Because they're play on words and they're like not like, I know some other like dirty, like they're just dirty. Like I bet $100 one night. I said, I bet you $100 that I can chug 3 pints faster than you can take 3 shots. And through the argument, I got him to agree that we weren't asses. So that was the first. Second one, I get him to agree that because I'm chugging pints, be allowed to like down my first pint before he starts into his 3 shots. So he agrees to this. And the second he agreed to that second set of terms, I knew I had him was no getting out. So I chugged my first pint. He grabbed his first shot glass and put it down. I flipped my pint upside down and put it over top of his last shot glass.
Yep.
Allowed to touch your glasses. You're not allowed to touch mine. You can't lift that glass to get the shot. Now I got the rest of the night to drink these 2 fucking pints because you can't finish that shot, and I make $100. So there's some like that are just mean, right? They're just mean, but some of the other ones are like good humored and they're fun and they're funny. And I used to pull those out a lot. And it was my way of making that extra, $40 to $120 a night, depending on how many people I could get hooked into it or hooked into one of those play on words. And it was kind of my solution to not being an attractive female, which in that setting, and I'm not knocking on it like at all, but in that setting, if you got some cleavage, you're probably going to make more money than me, right? Mm-hmm. So a way of kind of keeping up, especially
you don't even need that much cleavage realistically. Like realistically, a pretty face and a fake shot is usually all it really takes.
Especially around here, like we would pool tips, so all the tips would go into one place, and then we'd split them up at the end of the night. So you never wanted to be that dead horse that just wasn't, to the team. So anything you can do.
Yep. No, I get that entirely. I found the ingredients for the Burt Reynolds mustache. 3/4 of an ounce of rye, 1/4 of an ounce of vodka, 3/4 of an ounce of green chartreuse, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 of an ounce of maraschino, half an ounce of Campari, and 1 dash of cardamom bitters.
I mean, it's in a family that's very similar to like Corpse Survivor or even a Paper Plane for that matter.
Paper Plane.
Chino and the green chartreuse, also a bit reminiscent of something called a Last Word. Those cocktails are not necessarily my preference. That's I shouldn't say that. Some of them I really like, some of them less so. This one with the use of the lemon juice, it's probably fairly enjoyable. I don't think I've ever actually had one. It all sounds like it could work. I'd have to actually try it out, but it does sound like it would work.
And this one does have specific brand on the bottles, so like that might even influence, especially for you, how this would play out. So it's Redemption Rye, Howard's Black Vodka, Luxardo Maraschino, and Scrappy's is the brand of bitters.
These orange bitters, yeah. And then you said green chartreuse as well.
Yeah, it is green chartreuse.
Yeah, chartreuse is getting really difficult to get, which is unfortunate. I'm glad that it's grown in popularity, but it makes it sad that I can't always get it. But no, I mean, that's similar to several other cocktails in the ratio and in the ingredient type selection. So I feel confident in saying that would balance out well, and that it would definitely be something that would be enjoyable. Whether or not it's your personal preference would kind of depend.
Everyone's got their own tastes. Yeah.
Liqueur in particular is not my thing, and I've tried many times to enjoy it. I've got a bottle of it on bar right now. It's just not my thing, and like anytime it's in anything, I'm just like, it doesn't say I like or dislike something either. Like I will sit there and drink it. I'll drink it. I'll eat it. If you put it in front of me, it's going down.
You're an Easterner. I know some of the things you guys eat, so yeah. I mean, if you can stomach fiddleheads, you can stomach pretty much anything.
Like I said, we grew up drinking creme de menthe and fuck it, and Bailey's out of the fridge. Yeah. So I was also telling Terry about some of your weird ass jobs that you've had prior to being in the service industry. I can't remember if it was actually a thing or if I'm like misremembering stuff, but you were with the circus for a little while, right?
It was trying to get into the National Circus School in Montreal.
Right. Okay. That's it.
So My uncle was a concession manager for a circus called the world famous Moscow State Circus. That's the name of the circus. I don't think they had any relation to Russia
Yeah,
whatsoever. And they would come to the Maritimes every summer and travel around the Maritimes. And I often would go with my uncle and just like help out, help set things up, tear things down, go sell cotton candy and toys and stuff like that
You fucking
in
carny. That's all I'm
yeah,
hearing from it. Like I get it. Like someone in the wrestling world, that's really all we are. Like wrestling at its core is a very carny thing.
Yeah.
so it was something that was really good because it introduced me to like person to sales really young. It introduced me to a lot of the like weird, wacky skill sets that I still have. Like I started juggling, contortion, tightrope, and like slackline walking. Mostly slackline, especially like in later years. But was lucky enough to kind of get introduced to those like high tension wires quite young. So I had kind of a weird one. But then in college, I started building a portfolio to apply to the National Circus School, and was in the last stages of the audition when I had a fairly unfortunate accident in 2009. I was longboarding, which I loved and continue to do for years afterwards. I haven't done it in several years now, but and I ate shit, went into a ditch, smashed my chest, basically scorpioned into the side of the ditch. I had a contusion to my liver, trauma-induced pancreatitis. I bruised my heart, had like blood pooling in the liner of my heart. And,
Jesus fuck, my dude.
Yeah,
what hill were you bombing down in Montreal?
St. Andrews, New Brunswick, and it was called Cemetery Hill.
Yeah, no fucking shit.
He tried to fucking bury himself in it. Yeah.
Right?
Sounds like it.
I just remember like my chest hitting.
Surprised you remember anything.
Yeah, well, and we actually like I hit a rock with my chest. It was deeply like it's about that big, and there was about that much of it sticking out of the dirt, and it bounced out of the side of the ditch when my chest hit it.
Fuck.
We have a long history.
Why do you have a chest? Like, Jesus.
I just remember like hitting, and my legs were coming up over. Luckily, I was in really good shape at the time, but I just remember thinking if you don't twist, your back is gonna snap.
Yeah.
When I rolled my hips, the bottom right-hand side of my rib cage just went.
Yeah, but that would have been your spine. Like, that circus training definitely kicked in and was like, hey, asshole, it's your ribs or your back, and one of these things is livable.
Yep. No,
I missed the final audition and settled on not wanting to pursue that at that point. Like, I was, because I was constantly being told that I had a talent that I should be pursuing. And I enjoyed it, but it laying in the hospital bed that really sank in that it was like, yeah, I enjoy goofing around and fucking around, but I don't want to do this 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the reason why I don't have a life. Like, I am a workaholic, so I knew it was going to be something eventually, but yeah.
No, I was going to say, we, as gauge tunners, have a long, proud history of fucking ourselves up on hills and just in general. I don't know how Tyler's still alive. You were there the time that I ate shit and just like cartwheeled on my face.
Several times. Although you in particular watched Doug wipe out off of his bike, and when the momentum finished, Doug was effectively upside down on his head, and before falling over, he physically turned his head to look at us, while all of his weight was like on his neck. And then he fell over. It was
that also sounds like a Doug thing to do.
Yeah.
It was impressive. Yeah, it was very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some good ones, man. I honestly sometimes don't know how we made it out of that village alive.
I had a buddy going down a hill on his bike one time when I was younger, and he had done it during the week, and I was like, my parents are split, so I went to my dad's place every other weekend. So sometimes you just come back and your friends were all fucked up and you didn't know why. So I guess during the week he had ridden his bike down this hill, and he had hit I don't know if it was a rock or like a bump in the sidewalk or what, but he flipped over his handlebars on the way down the hill. And his back was just tire marks all the way down. Because when you're halfway down the hill, you aren't letting go.
No.
Like you hold on and you get fucked, or you let go and you get fucked. You might as well just hold on for the ride, right?
That time Anthony and Tyler did the flip coming down the hill at your place, and
Oh yeah.
like a flesh skid mark down the road for like a good 10 feet. And like, it's been a week and a half of like random. One of the girls in the cadet corps, but like random girl just like sitting there with tweezers picking gravel out of his back, like,
Oh.
bro.
So the same friend, he just had real shit luck. And especially because there weren't very many of these, even in like mid 2000s in London. Those old school like wooden picket fences, super easy to jump. Kids fucking dream. Ball goes in the yard. Super easy thing to get over. I don't know how he managed to fuck this up, but he gets to the top of the fence and he goes to go down. And he goes over, and the tip of the fence catches him in the back of the calf, right behind the knee, and splits him right to his ass cheek.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there for it, but I heard more than one account, and I guess all the fat and everything just right to the ground.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's brutal.
Everything. Like it all opened at once.
That's something that our buddy Tyler would have done. Tyler, we called the Bionic Man because he was more metal than person by the end of it, our childhood. But he karate kicked himself out a second-story window onto a
So glad you brought it up, because if you didn't, I was going to.
He karate kicked. So hang on. There's a couple of ways I imagine this. I
so
like
much
to
better
think
than
of
you're
this.
imagining.
So the way I like to imagine this is it's like your friend is Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he thinks he
You're not
can do
wrong.
karate, and he cannot. So I am envisioning this thing where he is like, "Hey, I could totally get you with a karate kick right now," and he goes to do it, and he just fucking sails past you, heads out the window.
So a lot
Okay.
You're pretty close. His
Halfway.
karate and everything was largely informed by Chuck Norris movies. But
I will now administer a sweet roundhouse kick to the bell.
That was kind of you. I was going to go with Steven Seagal, but
well,
please
yeah,
go
there
on.
was Seagal
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But no,
For
you're
a minute. So you know what? This is a little bit better than where I thought it was going to go. For a minute, I thought when he started with this, that the extent of his karate, for a minute, I thought he was going to go was the Karate Kid, and I was going to be like, all right, well that's kind of rough. This is not a great starting point. And then you said Chuck Norris, I was like, all right, this is a little bit better. He's got some bases. And then you go Steven Seagal, and I'm like, fuck, he's done.
So important distinction is this is Gagetown, and like I said, we were in a weird tech period, so nobody had stolen a copy of Karate Kid at that point. So
no Jean-Claude Van Damme worked in here anywhere.
No,
Damn.
But
no Jet Li, no nothing.
So the thing with Tyler was he did that without a target. So he didn't try and kick somebody. He was practicing karate and just went whoop right out his fucking window.
How fucking uncontrolled do you have to be to go out your own goddamn window?
My understanding is that what happened with this is even better than what Doug is describing. My understanding is that he roundhouse kicked the punching bag.
Oh, right.
And it swung around and hit him flying through the window on the second story.
Yep.
Down to the... And his parents were sitting on the deck, so they just like hear a smash and look over, and here's Tyler laying on the fucking ground.
on a concrete slab.
What do your parents even do? Like, what do your parents even do at that point? To just drink, like take a sip of their fucking coffee and go, nice weather we're having.
Like a 6 by 6 foot slab of concrete.
Yeah.
And That's exactly where he landed.
No,
Yeah.
I
It's like the
legitimately,
bullseye
I
where
just have a
Scott-
patio. I just have a patio outside. Like
Yeah.
my backyard is 100% stone patio. So I'm imagining being on my second floor right now. Thank God. Now that this is in my head, like it would send me through a fucking plate glass door, but like at least it's ground level. Now that this is in my head, I'm so thankful my punching bag is not on the second floor because I would have fucking nightmares about this thing turning around and doing to me what it did to your friend. And
Yeah.
I'm sure your friend was bigger than me because I am a tiny little dude.
Yeah, yeah. No, we did a couple other really fucked up ones. There was when I cut my nose off when I put my face through the window.
About that going in through the back window.
Yeah.
I'd love to say that one surprises me, but that one is just par for the course.
Yeah. No, face
Yeah.
face.
Cut your nose off.
Yeah, face first through a window on rollerblades, and then I. so I had to rollerblade to the doctor's office, holding my nose onto my face. Just...
Again, I would love to say that I'm surprised by any of it, but these are all just, yup.
Yeah, yeah.
This is Doug.
Yeah, we had, like I said, it's a miracle we came out of there alive sometimes. Fucking Eric is, like, deathly allergic to fucking, like, 90 million things growing up. But in particular, it was mushrooms and chicken. Those were the two, like, no-go things for Eric. What fucking animal do you think they kept at their house?
Turkeys. Turkeys I'm allergic to, not chicken.
Okay, turkeys, right. But yeah.
But yeah.
You're allergic to turkeys.
Yeah, I still have a really tough time with turkey. Most other things like I've like adjusted to, like things were really weird for a couple of years. I had like some weird immune system response to basically everything around me.
You're friends with Doug for that long. I'm sure some adverse effect is bound to come out of it.
Yeah, it was a really weird time in my life. Like there was a lot of testing, a lot of just like dealing with all of that crap, and then trying
And roughly how long had you known him, just so I know when this type of thing is bound to occur?
When 11 years old, and then we joined cadets together at 13. So, and then I'm 38 now. So,
okay, so you're testing. You known him for a couple of years, so I'm safe for another year or two. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
For a couple of years, and then it just like like I said, my immune system just like shut down, and so it was a weird time. Like I was doing a round of testing every 2 weeks, which was any like basically a series of like injection tests. Yep. So like basically 100 injections in the run of an 8-hour period in a day. Follow that up with a detox IV. I was doing weekly blood tests at the hospital, and then had to take multiple injections a day depending on like how my body responded to the things it was interacting with.
I'm afraid of needles. I hated every second of every word you just said.
Awful. It was, but like it was weird because like literally after 4 years, my body just like started to readjust itself, and a lot of the things that had made me very sick beforehand were less of an issue. After I still have a hard time being, and honestly, I don't think it has anything to do with like my actual like physical health. It's actually just the fact that I'm regularly like overstimulated in general. But anything that is going to fill a room with any smell, it's very, very difficult for me to like handle, because it just like it overwhelms me completely. Even to the point where in the fall, and this is like one of my favorite / like least favorite times of the year. In the fall, you get that first couple of frosts, dust and pollen and just stuff in the air, and then you get that first frost and everything falls, right? Just literally everything drops to the ground and the air gets super, super clean, which is great because it's like I haven't been able to breathe since like March. So so it's really, really nice, to all of a sudden get a breath of fresh air. But from that moment on, like a month, I should say, every smell that I interact with walking down the street hits me like a fucking freight train.
Yeah.
and it's really overwhelming at times. I think that's part of the reason why I've been so successful, like doing what I do professionally, as I'm very good at identifying flavors and very good at identifying complementary flavors and you know how to combine ingredients. It just kind of inherently makes sense to me without a whole lot of effort. So very fortunate that way. That it's just something that I click. But I think there is also a bit of a physiological like issue going on there that probably has more to do with you know, being somewhere on the like ADD ADHD spectrum there somewhere. So
I 100% feel that. Like it's so weird to go into a place and be like yeah, this is a really nice spot, but it smells too good, and the lights hurt my soul, so I'm gonna have to leave. like,
yeah,
like,
and that's exactly what it literally can't get that to leave me alone long enough to even enjoy anything else around me,
mm-hmm.
or to even notice it. Like it's like I can't I can't spare the
Yeah.
brain power.
Like, have you ever
Like,
been in a spot where the lights are too loud? Like, that's yeah.
percent, especially fluorescent light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the not only the light but then also that like hum, and I just can't not unhear it. So it's just there the whole time. I'm just like, oh my god, shut the fuck up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it's looking back on it, it's no wonder me and you hung out so much when we were kids, because we were we were fucking messes.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, in the best possible way. I like some of my favorite memories of like childhood are actually like hanging out with Doug here and you know, like drawing comic books and drafting movie scripts and like filming little like stop motion animations with like Legos and like, you know, plastic dinosaurs and shit. And like,
Oh my god.
I mean,
we threw my brother off the roof so many times for that one shot. Yeah.
your oh my god.
Yeah, I just
He's like a champ though.
I remember him hitting the ground. We're like, dead guys don't complain, John. Keep it together. Off the roof you go.
You can't moan like that, John.
No, I had one shoot like that in high school where I accidentally concussed my friend.
Yeah.
We were doing a bit where it was like, you know, the average day in the life of a student. We were shooting it for high school broadcasting, and one of the scenes that we wanted was just like, well, out while people were playing sports, you know, soccer at lunch. You know, the goalie was supposed to go for the ball, and you know, he's supposed to miss it with his hands and take the ball off the head. And my friend, bless his soul, jumped into it with his hands at his fucking sides for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot goalies could even attempt to use their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, my ironically enough, my good buddy Tyler.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something about the name, huh?
Yeah.
So he jumps into this thing. Is your Tyler also a ginger?
No, he's
Blonde.
yeah.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
that would have been real funny. No, mine's like ginger like.
Yep.
But anyway, so he jumps into it head first, and he like it was a real windy day. It was not the softest ball. Like soccer balls have come a long way since we shot this. And it was an old ball too, so it had been through the ringer. And I cracked it from near half field.
Yeah.
And it was so windy that the wind just took it and it sailed, and it clipped him in the head without ever touching the ground. Like it just sailed straight to his forehead. And he hit the ground and just sacked. We only ever got the one take of it. We were supposed to get a few. We only ever got the one take. He just sacked.
My God.
And we cut it, and I run over to him, and I just start tapping him. Like, hey, man, like, what's up? What's up? He's like, huh, what? I was like, you all right? And he's like, I was like, you just got knocked in the head pretty hard.
Were you there when I took the baseball in the forehead? I can't remember. Probably because I took a baseball in the
The
forehead.
seams were imprinted on your forehead.
Yeah, that
Oh
sounds
my God.
that
Like a
sounds
week.
about right.
Yeah.
It was like right after I moved to Gagetown. Like we moved in September, and that was like that next season softball. I still hadn't made any friends in town. because I went to a different school than everybody else did. So my parents were like, "Yeah, you're going into some kind of a sport, whatever they've got," and it happened to be softball, and I think that's kind of where everything really got rolling. My parents also at one point, and this is kind of like my introduction to like Gagetown soccer, was to drive me down to the elementary school, and there was kids playing soccer, and they literally just kicked me out of the car and left.
Yep.
Damn.
But yeah, I was pitching on that one, and Buddy line drived it square in the middle of my forehead. Took me completely off my feet.
How many feet between the pitcher's mound and home plate?
Any in softball, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't.
I couldn't say for sure, but probably like I'd say about like 30.
Yeah.
At most.
You had a whole 60 feet to duck, Doug. 30 there, 30 back.
Look,
you couldn't figure it out?
If I didn't have the reflexes before, I definitely don't after. Okay. but yeah, we used to do some shit. Me and Eric were also in the band together for a little while. We were both drummers. Although I remember
2 drummers in one band. How did that play out?
Pipes and drums.
Like a military pipe band. Yeah.
Oh, that's that. I thought you meant a real band.
Even at that, it wasn't really much of one. I think we had like four kids playing drums and one person playing on the bass, and that was about it.
Yep. But we rocked it.
We did have like, wasn't Aaron played like the cello or not the cello? Sorry, the clarinet or something like that too.
Yeah, clarinet or flute? Was it flute? I don't know.
A little flute as an American Pie reference, which she really didn't appreciate.
Yeah, I can imagine that didn't go over so well.
But yeah.
I can imagine that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although band camp was a fun time, I will say that we did have to go to band camp one time.
So I know a lot of people in the music department from when I went to high school, and I've never heard a bad band camp story. Like everything that the movie told me was a thing has in some way been confirmed or denied through various
like
people talking about their band camp experiences.
That's any youth group in any like any semi unsupervised setting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. I mean, your teenagers. It is like, yeah.
Yeah, the shit we got up to was just unreal.
It was a shit show too.
And like you guys came from like the era of like adults would kind of like side eye that shit and be like, kids will be kids. Nowadays, it's like, don't you fucking do that. You get over there.
Now a lot of it's jail time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And have like a nighttime curfew in the summertime, and like I said, I lived 5 kilometers away from like kind of the center of where we all hung out. Some wouldn't come home for days, and like,
yeah.
As far as I know, nobody called to figure out where I was. Like,
yeah, you just fucking disappeared.
Mom and Dad figured that you would figure it out, or you wouldn't.
I remember sleeping on a boat in the marina. Like, it wasn't my boat. I don't know whose boat it was.
What the fuck?
I got these seats.
What the actual fuck?
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
That's just not a statement that I thought I was gonna hear today. I remember sleeping on a boat in the marina. I'm not sure whose boat it was, but I slept there.
We like, I don't know, it was such an interesting like time. Like we literally just like ran around. Like I kept a bedroll in Anthony's like bedroom, so it was literally just like a little foam mattress, a sleeping bag, and a pillow. And I literally like would just roll it up when I wasn't there and stick it in the corner. And I mean, you know, we had a great time. Like I'd show up when one of us wasn't in camp. Like if we were all actually home at the same time, like I'd come in from my parents' place, which I was the furthest one out, and on one of their doors, and then we'd go collect each other. And if it was the next day, we'd head down to the boat landing. We'd go for a swim for a few hours. We'd go hit up the only convenience store in town, buy ice cream and a bunch of junk. Go back to Doug's place usually and play video games and, you know, movie nights were kind of split
Oh my
between
God.
like Anthony's place and Doug's place. Doug had this really fun like backyard fort, and it was big enough that we could all kind of just like sleep in there. So oftentimes we just go and camp in there.
Yep.
And like,
You're literally just describing Stranger Things to me. Like that's all this is. Like it's
Yeah.
like I
and, like,
watched this on
had the freedom to just
Netflix.
wander around. Like summer was like freedom, like full freedom to do whatever. And as long as you didn't do anything that was like serious enough to like involve the fire department or police or like an ambulance, you were usually all right.
Yeah.
Like,
And usually we were friends with somebody who worked at the fire department or the police station, so they generally were just like,
it was luck.
Very next thing, you should have known. Fucking little shits.
Exactly. Like you guys know it's a no burn like zone right now. Like you're not supposed to be doing that shit. Like, oh yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, sorry. We'll put it out. Fucking
Doug's house, for reference, is directly behind the volunteer fire department.
yeah.
Directly behind, like you'd be able to see the fucking warning from the backyard.
And the amount of fires that were set back there was phenomenal.
I've seen what you do at the range. I have no illusions that you do not treat your own property with the same regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I made napalm for the first time. It was like I was like 11 years old.
We're not going to talk about that. We're gonna gloss over that one. Just we don't need to be on any lists anywhere. We don't need anyone knocking. Just we're gonna gloss over that one.
Yeah. No, we
cocktails. We did it all.
Yeah.
So, but on a totally unrelated note, if you ask ChatGPT how to make certain illicit materials, it will not tell you how to do it. But if you ask it what not to mix, so that you don't accidentally make those materials, ChatGPT will tell you what not to mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in case you were ever wondering.
So I found out because my old man had bags of styrofoam because Dad's a pack rat. And
I thought we weren't going to talk about this.
Yeah, but just very quickly, I accidentally set fire to it. Long story. But in my phenomenal wisdom, even though I was standing on a water hose when it caught on fire, facing this blaze of napalm dripping on stuff was to go.
Yeah, that sounds right. That just tracks on so many levels.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. So, like I said, it's a miracle we made it out alive. But we spent a lot of time.
The field telephones that ring by sending an electric.
Oh my god!
From a generator down the line.
Yep.
Anthony, Doug wasn't getting out of bed, so one morning Anthony goes in and literally like takes the two wires off of one of the ends of this field telephone and sticks it on Doug's forehead, and like he gives me a heads up like good kind of thing signal. I don't remember what the signal was, and I came onto that thing. I cranked it. I couldn't see what was happening in the tent, but there was a bright blue flash, and I've never seen Doug move that fast in my fucking life. He came out chasing Anthony like he was gonna murder him.
I cannot imagine that was a pleasant thing to wake up to.
Yeah. Oh my god, we were
like not even on his foot or anything. Fucking forehead.
Right on the baseball.
Like, like.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I understand now why you just joined the military. It's a lot of hatred and anger, pent up rage in there.
There was a lot of. Where else are you going to get away with shenanigans? That was the majority of our existence was summed up by watching Monty Python and Army of Darkness, playing GoldenEye, and shenanigans. That's about it.
Lots and lots of shenanigans.
Yeah. But oh my god, just our little shit like when we were sneaking out of the cadet camp and fucking we're trying to sneak up on your old man in the middle of the night. Yeah, we did a surprising amount of shit like well after dark in a small village, which you can tell that we're Canadian and not American because most of the stuff that we would have done, we probably would have got shot for.
We got absolutely.
Maybe not in the 80s. Maybe not in the 80s, like the 80s, 90s. Maybe not.
You go to Farmer's Field
That's true. That is true. You guys probably would have had some birdshot in you, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Or like
we are
getting
we're
magazines out of old sheds. Yeah.
yeah, we are creeping up on that 2 hour mark,
Fair.
especially since we started early. So since we talked about all these great home stories, we're gonna end things off with a two-part question that is a little farther away from home. What is your favorite travel destination?
And that's tough. I am personally like exceptionally agnostic, and not just from like my spiritual belief system, but from like my entire world, my entire life. So that really translates into the way that I view things, which is why I'm so non-committal when it comes to like answering questions about favorites. I think every place that I've ever gone had something inherently interesting
Mhm.
there, whether I saw it in the moment or not. And so, I appreciate every place that I've been. I had a very negative experience, for example, in Belize when I was traveling there. Um, value that experience tremendously, possibly even more than some of the positive experiences that I've had, because it taught me something very valuable about like just like myself and like how I interact with society, and how much prejudice exists like within our society specifically. And I mean, to make like a long story longer, I was in a to experience like full blown racism directed towards me as a white person for the first time ever.
Yep.
I was a minority, and I really, really, really didn't like it. And at the time, it left me with a really sour taste in my mouth. But over the years, I've looked back at that moment so many times, and I'm so grateful to have had it, because it showed me how poorly I reacted to that type of treatment over the course of a few days. And then when I imagine that some people, this is something that they've been enduring culturally for generations upon generations upon generations, it made me a lot more understanding of some of the psychological effects that would create, some of the doubt that it would create, some of the lack of confidence that it would inspire in people. Really, really grateful for that experience.
Yeah, that's incredibly
Love.
insightful. My little brother, when he started going to high school here in town, like London is a predominantly white city. I won't say anything around that. We 100% are. But the high school that he went to had a very large Arab population. And he wound up leaving that high school because he did not like the way he was treated. And I flat out said to him when he was in the ninth grade, I remember sitting there on the couch with him. He was upset about it. I was like, hey, man, I was like, I totally understand why you don't like this. I said, but I think you should stick this out. I think you should keep going here, and this is why. And that was essentially the conversation I had with them. It was like, this is an opportunity for you that not a lot of people like us will ever get.
Yeah, and I mean it's true, and like I don't know, it just made me really open my eyes to kind of like treatment of people in general, and how easy it is to generalize.
Mhm.
And that's led me down a path where I reprimand myself very quickly when I do have any kind of an assumption that because I notice it really quickly, and also it's allowed me to just develop some really interesting relations with people, and able to have conversations with people that never would have had before that experience.
Hmm.
I mean, really, really good. But from like a poignant, I guess, point of view, like I've always been a bit of a Japanophile. When we first moved to Gagetown, I didn't have a whole lot of access to like television or internet and stuff like that beforehand, and there was an old satellite dish on the property, and a couple times a day it picked up some Japanese satellites, and I was able to watch a lot of Japanese anime. Uh, During our time as a childhood, or in our childhood, Doug and I, there was a lot of Japanese either productions or like influenced cartoons and animes that were making their way into like more mainstream viewing, and so I was always really into it. I became a Funimation fan club member at the age of 12. I like sent away a little postcard with
Hmm.
a with a check, and um, my trip to Japan was fantastic. I was there for a month. I basically started in the extreme north, and I ate and drank my way to the extreme south without going to Okinawa, like way down south in the islands and stuff like that. But I was up on the top island, Hokkaido and Sapporo, and beautiful country. I would love to go back at some point. Um, the fun's the exploration. So the
So
next
if the fun is in the exploration, the second half of the question is, where would you like to go that you haven't gone yet?
I
You got cut off there, sorry, at the beginning of your answer. Can we get that again?
is very high on my list.
It did it again. Singapore. Okay, I can read
Okay.
lips well enough that one actually came through. For whatever reason, it only wants to pick up the poor.
Yeah, really high on my list of destinations that I'd like to go. The food culture, beverage culture, hospitality culture is really well developed. As mentioned a couple of times, I'm also like a sucker for torturing myself. So part of me's been obsessed with doing another like really long trip, like a large physical feat, whether it be a large hike like the Appalachian Trail or something like that. But that's pretty high up on the list as well. I don't think I'll ever. I was obsessed with the idea of climbing Everest as a kid, and now with the amount of traffic that's there and just the commercialism of that whole trip, I don't think it's really for me anymore. But kind of thing
Well,
for
you
me. Like
can't even climb all of Everest anymore, can you? There's certain sections that have been shut down, I think, or I know there are certain mountains that are now getting to the point where they've hit that so overpopulated or overburdened that they're shutting them down.
any long-term physical feat that pushes me to the point where like your body's just like in shutdown and you're forced to rely on like your willpower and your own like personal voice to keep moving. I the silence in my mind that I only experience when doing something like that tremendously, and I don't think I have a whole lot of gas left in my tank to be able to do many more of them. So that's pretty high on my travel priority list is just like taking on another like large endurance physical feat that I can look back at and go like, yeah, like you really like you basically destroyed your body. You were able to do it, and you went far beyond your physical capacity or the physical capacity that you thought you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was that was one of the things that again, Eric's one of the ones who got me into climbing back when we were younger because we used to climb on all kinds of weird shit. And then you went to Banff the year before I went to Banff, did you not? If I recall, or did we go the same year? Oh, sorry, you dropped out there. Just completely.
Yeah, you see, it's not just me.
Weird. Yeah.
Me out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But yeah, I was just saying, like, yeah, I know. We used to climb on all kinds of shit. Then we both got into rock climbing around the same time, except I think you hit it a bit harder than I did initially, and then I had to play catch up.
Yeah, I climbed. Basically, started climbing around 13, so we were in cadets. But was really lucky. One of the teachers, because I was a horrible student, so I had like a TA, and she would actually take me rock climbing as a reward for not being a shithead.
Mm-hmm.
And that continued right on into college. I managed a rock climbing wall for years. I climbed competitively for 4 years. Yeah, definitely went after it for years and loved it until I basically exploded the toe on my left foot, and I haven't really been able to
get a good grip.
I was climbing not at like the highest level, and there was many climbers better than me, but like I to climb at the same level that I had been climbing, and that drop in my ability was so heartbreaking that I kind of just walked away from climbing completely. Like it even to this day, it's like something that like it to me. I mean, I don't regret things and I don't look back at things like that, but like,
I mean, I can completely understand it. Anytime you go out of something, you always want to go out on your terms. You always want to go out at the top of where you feel you could go out. You never want to go out feeling like you're lesser.
I had a compound fracture in my toe. We had to cut the climbing shoe off of my foot.
Oh shit!
Like, I had already broken that toe numerous times, and so now it's like even today, like it's fully fucked. Like the bones all fused together in that toe. I can't actually bend it. Like I mangled it. So, but yeah, part of the.
Yeah.
We've so this is, I think, officially our longest interview now. We've gone over the 2-hour mark, or just around like the 2-hour flat mark.
I'm gonna talk,
Almost.
although
We're
my
killing
wife is
it.
now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where like we're definitely trying to nail down the format. Thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, it's great having someone who is a talker. It makes things easier on us. We have to feel less like I don't have to come up with as many supplemental questions as the ones that he sent you because you can actually answer a question. Like that makes our life easier. So thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for giving us your time.
Yep. And thank you for the drinks that I'm definitely going to be enjoying when I get out of this.
Yeah, I honestly, I haven't been out east in forever. I've got friends that I know are out there. I should come out there at some point, and if and when I do, I know where I'm coming for a drink.
We'll see you here.